And good afternoon, everyone. I am Candy Lapad, MBM 1998 and an officer of the AIM Alumni Association. And I will be your host and moderator for this afternoon. Before we begin, let me remind you of the rules of engagement for AIM webinars. First, to avoid unnecessary distractions, please keep yourself on mute while the speakers are presenting. If you have questions for the speakers, please type them in the Q&A box. It's on the bottom of your screen, and we will address them at the end of the two presentations. You can upvote your questions when you think they are important and relevant, and the speakers will answer the most popular ones. Lastly, type your comments in we also have a chat box. This will be monitored and shared with the speakers as well. With that, let's start. Welcome. The topic for this session is impact of the new normal on logistics. The freight flow or cargo or logistics flow, may it be via air, on sea, on land, has been a fundamental component of economic systems. So what happens when this smooth flow is disrupted by a global health crisis? No? So this afternoon, our speakers will give us an overview of the impact on the new normal on international transportation, the challenges being faced in the Philippines, the impact to supply chains, and introduce us to take a new journey to supply chain resilience. Now it's with great pleasure that I introduce the first speaker this afternoon. Professor Rene T. Domingo is an international consultant, author, professor, lecturer in the fields of management in operations and production, total quality management, turnaround management, productivity improvement, strategic planning. He also lectures on our favorite subjects: Six Sigma, 5S, continuous improvement, world-class manufacturing, lean management, business process re-engineering, supply chain, and customer service management. He graduated magna cum laude at the University of the Philippines as an industrial engineer. Professor Rene has more than 30 years of consulting and training experience covering manufacturing, construction, mining, and other various industries, not only in the Philippines and Southeast Asia, but includes India, Guam, Marshall Islands, Vietnam, and Germany. He took up his master's in management engineering at Nagoya Institute of Technology, with intensive hands-on training and experience at the Toyota production system in Japan. And of course, he is close to our hearts as our professor in operations management at AIM, being a faculty since 1982. Opo, my batchmates and I were previous students of Professor Domingo. Professor Rene, if you are ready, please. We are excited to hear and learn from you.
Okay, thank you, Candy. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So, good afternoon to everyone. So, our topic today is the impact of the new normal on logistics. And so far with this pandemic, I think we're familiar on the impact of the crisis on various aspects of the economy, like our healthcare system, travel and tours, airline, food and restaurant. So we know the unfortunate impact of this on this establishment. So today we'll look at a little bit more on the logistics industry and how this is impacted by this crisis, for better or for worse. So I'm going to share with you some insights on how the pandemic will impact logistic providers as well as logistics users, okay, both parties. So based on my studies, I recognize 12 mega trends on the new normal that will impact this industry. Okay, this may not be complete, but I think this will be useful to help us spot problems, opportunities, challenges during these difficult times. And I hope many establishments can use this to pivot, to turn around their business and to prepare for the new normal. Okay, so let's start with the first one, and after this I will share other ideas, but I think this is a big start. So number one, of course, everybody's familiar that the demand for logistics services will increase as traditional face-to-face businesses face problems in getting clients. So they're shifting to e-commerce or adding e-commerce to their traditional brick and mortar model. So again, this is good news for logistic providers, but this can be a pain point for a lot of traditional businesses who are not used to e-commerce. So there's a learning curve there, okay? Including how to select logistic providers who will serve their online clients. So this is one important trend, right? And this will continue as more industries suffer, no, from lack of customers. The second, I think, that will be very important is on the side of the users. A lot of industries have suffered low sales, so they're burning cash because of high fixed costs. And because of that, one of their biggest fixed costs is logistics, if they do it in-house. So those who are doing in-house will, I think, increasingly outsource their logistics to convert it to variable costs, to fees instead of salaries. This will protect them on the ups and downs of sales. So again, this is good news for service providers because more and more people will give up their own logistics operation because this is high overhead for them. And it's not essentially core competence. And I still believe there are many companies that are still doing their own logistics. No? But this will change in the new normal. The third, and I think this is the other reason why demand for logistics will increase. A lot of goods will become consumer goods, home-based, because we're locked up in homes. And there'll be greater demand for the transport of essential goods. No? And the destination are not companies, but homes, communities. And this could be delivered daily, like foods, or home equipment, like appliances, sports, IT equipment. If you're doing study at home schooling, right? So you need a lot of computers, tablets. If you don't dine out, then you need to order food. So a great demand for essentials. This has not happened before, no? In the pre-pandemic times. We'd like to go out shopping, dining out, but this will increase these kinds of logistic scope, no? Okay, more of the consumer base. Okay, so again, this will increase velocity, increase frequency, as I will explain later on. Okay. So the cargo will change, so to speak. Of course, if you go upstream, this will also change in terms of the upstream logistics. Right? Okay. Now we go to the fourth trend, and this has to do with expectation rather than volume. Okay. So one is there'll be more and more logistics shifting from B2B to B2C or even C2C. Right. Okay. So B2B, these are the bulky items from factory to factory, importation. But because everybody's locked down, we are now looking at more deliveries to consumers rather than to businesses. And what is C2C? Well, a lot of people will be exchanging goods from one consumer to another. And this can require logistics services. This is again new, right? Like when I send some items to my friend, to my neighbor, I may have to use logistics services. I may not do that myself. So again, this is new demand, new markets, C2C. Okay, so the frequency will become higher, the volume will become smaller, okay, compared to the pre-pandemic times. So this is an opportunity, I think, for new players. Of course, there are already new players in this, no? Delivering food, delivering, parcels, but becomes an open field. Okay. The fifth trend, I think, will be proximity, right? People would prefer shorter distance, nearby destination, nearby supplier. So we'd like proximity, but you don't want to bring it yourself. Okay, you like safety and convenience. You'd rather pay somebody to bring it over, even though it's nearby. People may not want to save money and okay, instead of bringing it himself because of the viral infection possibility. So again, typically you use logistics services for distant services. Now even nearby services will become lucrative, okay? Even nearby, because of fear of infection. So again, this is good news. This is opportunity again. More frequent, nearby, smaller packages, and you're bringing it to homes rather than to factories. So this is how the new normal will evolve. No? The new normal logistics will evolve, no? As behavior changes. We're now locked up in our homes, so the logistic requirements and expectations would change also. Okay, number 6, of course, since the demand will be greater, and this is good news for these industries compared to other industries, there'll be more price competition. And since it's a very lucrative, there'll be entry of unreliable, providers, very unprofessional. So we have to be very selective on who to choose. Okay. So they will dive their price, but again, be careful of the quality of the service, which I will talk about later on. Right? Okay. So this is bound to happen. New players, every Tom, Dick, and Harry would like to be in this game, right? So now we have a problem for the end users. Who do I pick? They have no brands, right? They have no brands. Or even if I'm a restaurant, I want to get a logistic provider to transport my food. Who do I call, right? The lowest bidder? It may not be that way, right? Okay, so because the recipient of the cargo are consumers, we're very sensitive, no, to timeliness, to transparency on the service provider. We want the logistic frontline personnel to be trusted, to be safe. This is kind of new. Usually, logistics personnel do not have a lot of contact with customers, but with consumers, they will have a lot of contact. Okay, a lot of parcels you have to unload to homes. So this is new interaction, new interface. So logistic providers will have to improve their timeliness because consumers will be very time sensitive since you're bringing in food. Huh? So if the lunch is late, that's it. Right? You cannot be late for lunch just because the food is late. And they need transparency. They have to be assured that the process is taking place, their orders are being processed, their payments are being processed. So you have to assure them of this peace of mind, that their appliance will arrive. By the way, when your appliance breaks down, you don't want that to arrive late because you don't have a TV, you don't have a washing machine, you don't have a ref. Okay, the trend now is many appliances are breaking down because they're being overused in many homes. Because there are many people at home, so appliances life are getting shorter. So when somebody orders appliance, you have to deliver that on time because that's a replacement. That cannot wait, right? There is no ref. Food would spoil. No? So this will change the choice of logistics provider for appliance distributors. They have to give premium to timeliness rather than cost. Huh? Okay, so this is the new normal. The 8th is less people on the street. So logistics will be one way more reliable, less traffic, right? Less cars, but there's a problem on the negative side. There are more checkpoints, more rerouting, more road closures, and more unpredictable lockdowns due to outbreak. So how reliable will be the timeliness of logistics provider. So this becomes a key question. What's the net effect? Maybe our next speaker can share that with us. Is this plus for us or minus? No traffic, but more checkpoints. So what's the effect on it? Is it more reliable or less reliable? Okay, so that's a key question for logistic provider. Okay, the ninth trend I believe that will be relevant is handling and packaging will be very important because you're serving end users, not customers, not traders, not factories, but end users. So they will see the package. They will see the way their parcel was handled, especially if these were gifts, or these are precious items. Okay, and you've seen cases of this. Consumers taking pictures in social media, sharing social media of bad handling of cargo. This is kind of new because you normally you don't show this in traditional B2B. They become sensitive to packaging. Is my product safe? Was it destroyed? How is the logistics personnel? Is it courteous? So it's a new game. It's a new game, right? More contact. Okay, they want their packaging, their product to be protected. They want the food fresh when it arrives. So new expectations, which is not common in B2B logistics. In B2C, we have to move, we have to level up, right? The 10th is, of course, this is kind of, I like this discussion because as demand goes up for logistics, there'll be more impact on the environment, more carbon footprint because more vehicles on the road, more frequent, right? More destinations because of smaller packages, more homes. So you have emissions left and right. Okay, and there'll be a lot of packaging waste. When you transport something, you have to pack, overpack things. Right? And packaging can constitute 1/4 to 1/3 of the weight or the volume of the actual cargo. So a lot of waste are being thrown away. So this is the impact of high logistics demand on the negative side. The impact on the planet. So we have to manage this impact on society and environment. The third, the 11th and 12th, which I will discuss more in detail, is a disruption in logistics will have a multiplier effect during this crisis. It can cause shortages and aggravate shortages very quickly. A lot more multiplier effect because there is a dire need for certain items like medicine, food. So if logistics will be the bottleneck, will hinder this, the consequences will be a lot more adverse compared to the pre-pandemic times. Because a lot of items now are urgent. There's a need for urgency. Okay, I will discuss this more in detail. Okay, and lastly, BCP, business continuity planning, which used to be more on IT, more on protection from fires, floods, and volcanic eruption, will shift to supply chain continuity. So in the past few months, we experienced a lot of supply chain disruption, which I will explain later on in detail. So when you talk about BCP, it won't be complete unless you talk about supply chain continuity management. And this is now the new normal. What's your BCP? It's not going to be just about your IT system not breaking down, or you have a backup system for your computer. It's more than that. What about your supply chain? Is it robust? Is it robust? Okay, so those are the 12 mega trends that I believe will affect how we purchase these services and how we provide these logistics services. So let me share in detail some of the ideas under 11 and 12. Right? So if you look at Baguio, okay, Baguio is the source of a lot of vegetables, flowers consumed in Metro Manila. Right? This is our source of fruits, fresh vegetables, and local flowers. And you know what happened in just a few months? The prices collapse, right? There's a collapse of vegetables being sold at 10 peso. Flower growers in Baguio shredding their flowers because the price too low, or they cannot deliver to Manila, and vegetable farmers are just throwing away their vegetables, right? Instead of selling them, because it's not worth selling them, okay? Or they cannot sell them anyway, so it will just spoil. They'd rather return it to the ground. And this happens worldwide, no? Not only in the Philippines, huh? America, US, they're throwing away milk, right? Because milk prices have collapsed. Now, you always say, well, that's a supply issue. Actually, it's not just a supply issue. It's a logistics issue. Logistics is partly to blame for this. It's not demand, okay? Because there's still demand for this because it's food. The problem is this, right? Logistics, huh? Road closures, checkpoint that will slow down the trucks, right? So it won't be fresh when it arrives in Manila. Huh? A 3-hour trip can last 10 hours. Then it's not worth it. The value will disappear, huh, when it arrives in Manila. In other countries, they have the same problem. Like in Thailand, they have to disinfect entire cargos of transporting agricultural products. Imagine that, to disinfect, this will add to the lead time and reduce the value of the crops being delivered. So it's not just low demand that reduces the price. No, it's difficulty of transporting them to the faraway destination. Okay, well, let's look at toilet paper. We ran out of toilet paper, right? Especially in many countries, because the demand is spiked, right? And again, you always say that, okay, because there are no manufacturers of toilet paper. This is our typical assumption on why there are shortages. But that's not perfectly accurate argument. That's not true, okay? There are many supply and suppliers. The problem is, by the way, this is another thing. Because of the lack of supply, all these personal items prices went up, right? Price gouging, Lysol, N95, hand sanitizers, you know that, right? And we always blame lack of supply, huh? and high demand. It's like pure economics, right? High demand, low supply, prices spike. That's not perfectly accurate. Let me show you some interesting insight. In Europe, there are a lot of raw material for pulp, right? Which is the raw material for toilet paper. There are factories who can use it, but the factories cannot get the pulp because of, again, checkpoint, traffic jam. It's a logistics problem. So the raw material cannot get to the factory. So you cannot produce toilet paper. So suppliers have capacity, but they don't have raw material because of logistics problem caused by the pandemic. Okay. So that's the reason we have spikes in prices. They have factory capacity, production capacity, but raw material got stuck somewhere in the supply chain because the logistics were not planned very well. How do you deliver this raw material of toilet paper or what have you, or even face masks? Okay, so some things we have to address in the post-pandemic. Okay, the other idea is this. No, so just to summarize those two examples on crops and personal care products. So logistics disruption or lack of capacity, both would have the same effect, right? It's disrupted or you don't have capacity, will cause and aggravate shortages. Okay, so this is very sad, right? This is very sad. There's high demand for that. It could be medicine or food or and there is a lot of supply, right? We have capacity. But because of logistics disruption, very few will reach the users. Okay. And this is something we should solve because it's not a supply problem. It's a logistics problem. It's a logistics problem. The second scenario is this, right? There's high demand, but very low supply. So whatever little supply that can be sent to the market is further reduced by poor logistics. So again, the consumers will suffer. They cannot get even the few. They get fewer of the few. The worst is this. It's a double disruption. The supplier gets disrupted. The factory shuts down or they have no manpower because workers got infected. So there are very few production. Even that few production can still be reduced by poor logistics. So the effect of logistics disruption it's much more significant compared to the pre-pandemic times because of these issues. And this is not gonna cause this customer dissatisfaction. Not only it will cause suffering. Huh? If it's a medical supply, it will cause death, right? Unnecessary casualties in our healthcare system. Okay. Let me share with you the vaccine case. Okay? People wants to get the vaccine right away, so that to put an end to this pandemic once and for all. And two of our expectation with vaccine is this: let's develop a vaccine that is effective. That's one. So there's a race towards that. And let's develop a vaccine that is safe. And these are two different things, huh? Effective and safe. Now, people think if you have something that's effective and safe, you're on your way to normality. That's not true, because you have logistical challenges once you develop the right vaccine, because you have to vaccinate 8 billion people in 195 countries to wipe out this virus once and for all. Okay, so even if you pass through the first stage, you develop the right vaccine. The next stage is production. How do you mass produce this quickly at short time in high volume? That's already a logistics problem, because you need machines, raw material, you need horses, right? You know, if you have to what do you call that? Use animals to increase the production of vaccine. Where do you get all those millions of horses, right? Or animals? And then you get the packaging, the syringe and the vials, right? Well, how do you produce that? Billions of them. We have no stock of billions of vials, and the vial is specialized. It has to use quartz sand. Otherwise, the medicine would lose its potency. And it can only come from river mines. And then you have to destroy the river to get all this specialized quartz. It becomes an environmental challenge, logistically. So this was already documented. We're going to have a lot of environmental problem just to produce the package, the container for the vaccine. But wait, as they say, that's not all. We're just producing it. What about the storage of those billions and the administration? Who will inject it? How many nurses do you need to do this? Again, another manpower logistics issue. So it's not over, as they say, until it's over. Producing the vaccine is just one step, right? We still have a logistical challenge before we can go out to the streets and enjoy ourselves. Okay, so this is one thing we have to think about. So finally, I'd like to share the last few on supply chain continuity management, and this is very important when you talk about business continuity plan. Okay. So what is supply chain continuity? Okay. Well, traditionally, we always think of it as just, okay, raw material getting into the factory, and that's it. We have solved our supply chain problem. But again, how do you get it to the middleman, right? To the downstream? That's also supply chain. What if you got raw material, but you cannot deliver to your distributor? Then there's no value to that first step. What about middleman to consumers? They cannot get to the point of sale. Either you cannot deliver it or consumers cannot come. So again, unless this chain is complete, then it's not continuous. It will not get out of your pipeline. But that's not the only problem. You have a second tier supplier. If the second tier cannot serve the first tier because of disruption in logistics, then this chain will not work. Those customers will not get what they want. Okay? And you think that's simple. It's not that simple. Because factories producing tangible goods produce waste. They have to take the waste out. And this is logistics. This is logistics. If you cannot take the waste out, this factory cannot produce. It will be full of waste. You have to hold them up. And there are also reverse logistics. Materials that come back to the factory for recycling. That's also logistics. If those materials cannot come back, then if they use recycled materials, then you run out of materials. Okay? So there are many things to talk about. Plus the other non-material flow like manpower, information, cash flow. Okay? Of course, that's not the problem of logistics provider because these are intangible and people. So you talk about how do you get orders? This is information. How do you take purchase order? How do you get information data? How do you get people to the company, right? well, maybe this is manpower logistics. How do you hold employees and management back and forth the plant? Maybe this is room for people logistics. Like how do you bus them to the plant? Okay. And then utilities, energy. This is another flow, energy. Right? And finally, money, right? Payments. Okay. Because most of this can be solved by digital technology, right? Because this is digital, except this one, except you can work from home. Then that is solved. Those in the black, I think these are the concerns of logistics companies. So make sure that in your supply chain continuity management, you anticipate disruption and you proact. You proact. How do you reduce the probability of those disruptions? And what's your contingency plan for every pathway? Do you have a plan B for every pathway? And how do you prevent this from happening? And if you cannot prevent, how do you reduce the consequence? What's your fallback in case this is disrupted? How would your people go to serve the company? What is if this is broken? Where do you get the second tier? That's your problem. That's not only the problem of the first tier. That's also the problem of your company. Because if the second tier cannot supply the first tier, you get in trouble. You get in trouble. So this is end-to-end. You have to see the end-to-end view in planning for your supply chain. Okay, the last I'd like to share that will be a trend in supply chain and logistics is the way we select suppliers. Not only logistics providers, suppliers. So how do you choose them in the new normal? Well, in the pre-pandemic past, this is the way we choose supplier, the lowest bidder. Everybody knows that. Get the cheapest bidder and just pay him what he wants. The next one would be terms of payment, quality, delivery, financial capacity of the vendor. Does he have capacity? What are his track record? Does he comply with all the licenses, etc. Okay. Now in the new normal, you have to enhance this. This is not enough. This is not a risk-free criteria. You have to introduce risk management in selecting suppliers in the new normal. So one is make sure they are trustworthy and capable, because you cannot check suppliers physically. You have to rely on their word. You have to do e-inspection. Okay? You cannot probably even visit their factory because of the lockdown and social distancing. So you have to choose trustworthy, and they may not be the lowest bidder, the cheapest one. They have to be nearby or located in low risk areas. If they're very far, even though they're cheap, you have high risk, because we prefer suppliers, vendors who are near the end users to reduce the risk of disruption of road closure, traffic, and checkpoints. Okay? The closer, the better. We put premium to proximity, not just to price. Second one is we want suppliers who are traceable and transparent. We can track their processes. We can track how they handle goods. So if something goes wrong, we can trace back either people or material. It's documentation, especially if there is contact tracing, right? Contact tracing of supplier personnel or contact tracing of supplier deliveries. Where did this? Who touched this? So we need this in choosing supplier. Does he have a system of tracking? Okay. Before, this was not important. This was only an expectation of some buyers. Now this will be expectation of many buyers. Okay. You have to document all your process. Second one, you demand that they have biosecurity and biosafety in their process. This is common in agricultural industry, but now even in non-agri, they will demand that the supplier have biosafety and biosecurity and very robust EHS program. Similarly, they have to have a disaster preparedness, redundancy, contingencies, and to summarize, they have to have a BCP, focusing on supplier business continuity plan. Okay? The supplier himself must have a BCP. Otherwise, you cannot buy from that one. It become a very unreliable supplier. Okay? You have to establish long-term relationship with our supplier, whether they're supplier of raw materials or supplier of logistics services. Okay? So that in a nutshell is my thoughts about the new normal. And I'd like to invite you to see my other ideas on how to deal with the COVID pandemic. I have my Facebook and LinkedIn. Just go to this hashtag RTD COVID-19. I've shared a lot of ideas on how to deal with the crisis, how to pivot, how to turn around, which includes logistics and supply chain management. Okay, and plus, of course, I have my website which you can refer to. So thank you, Candy, for the time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rene, for that insightful presentation, sir. I really appreciate all of them. Megatrend summary, sir. So for reminders, everyone, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen for your questions. We will try to answer all of them at the end of the presentation so that both our speakers can address them. We are seeing a few questions already. So let's start. Our second speaker today. Let's welcome Mr. Juan Miguel Santamaria, or Wami, as his friends call him. He has close to 30 years experience in international logistics, specializing in carrier management and operations, including ocean, air freight, customs brokerage, and domestic distribution. He is proficient in key account management, customer service, and business development. Wami is currently the head of sales and marketing for DHL Global Forwarding Philippines, DHL being the largest logistics company globally. In 2019, Wami steered his DHL team to its first ever regional marketing and sales team award for Asia Pacific. Before joining DHL, he spent 8 years as director for worldwide logistics for Artisan. It's a technology manufacturing company. Before we start Wami's presentation, let's clear the pictures in our heads and change the scenery. We now have a clear view of the hidden vulnerabilities in the global supply chain because of this pandemic. So to update us on the logistics industry and its impact to the new normal, let's welcome our next speaker, Mr. Wami Santamaria. Wami, if you are ready, please, let's change the screens.
Okay, thank you, Candy. I hope everyone can hear me well. When I was asked to speak to AIM alumni, I thought about it for a whole, maybe 1-2 seconds, as I realized it's a privilege to speak to such an accomplished group of professionals. Although I'm a resource speaker on the topic, I looked at it as an opportunity also to learn from you by exchanging ideas and discussing topics that we could mutually learn from. So my presentation basically comes from a reference point of an international logistics provider, and also to a certain degree, some experience managing logistics from the manufacturing side. So when COVID arrived, obviously everything changed. Demand was destroyed, manufacturing closed or at least shut down for a period of time. Suppliers and customers were impacted, transportation modes were heavily disrupted, and many people were required to work from home. We are still in the COVID crisis as countries and regions and companies are still recovering in different levels. But at this time of great uncertainty, supply chain functions stood up, and we, and I mean we, the collective we, manufacturers, distributors, transport and logistics providers, airlines, shipping lines, truckers, we became the backbone, not just of our economy, but also for our society. So moving on to slide 2, let's look at the agenda. Today I'll be going through a few topics covering the air and ocean freight market, the challenges we face, specifically in the Philippines, and its impact to supply chains, and of course, our journey towards a new normal and supply chain resilience. moving to slide 3, I'll first tackle the topic of air freight. And I'll distinguish air freight and ocean freight. So unlike the ocean freight market, the air freight market depends on international travel, as passengers make up the majority of revenue of the airlines. No? So when borders closed and the travel industry dwindled, the airline industry went on a tailspin, with some airlines on the verge of bankruptcy. So globally, 41% of capacity went away, and freight rates increased by over 90% on the average. But for some markets like the Philippines, where international travel had been severely restricted due to the lockdown, we've seen rates spike up from 200, 300, even 400%. So the ECQ brought about a sharp decline in demand as manufacturing plants also shut down or reduced capacity significantly. Looking at page 4, we look specifically at the rates and where it's tracking right now against the baseline. So yes, on page 4, if you see the chart, the yellow line basically represents the baseline rates for 2019. So by February, the effects of the pandemic began creeping in as the reduction of passenger travel began, as parts of the world began obviously closing their borders. So you can see a big jump in the rates when they peaked in April as demand for PPE globally increased. So the bulk of the air freight global capacity typically moves on passenger flights. So freighters took on most of demand during this period as either charters, which specific forwarders ran exclusively for themselves, or regular flights where airlines such as China Airlines and Eva Air began deploying their freighters to augment the capacity in the capacity, the passenger aircraft began running out. So what some airlines did was they ran ghost flights. So what are ghost flights? Ghost flights are flights where they're flying, but there's no passengers, and they're only using the belly space or the cargo space, which contributed to the rise in cargo rates, because to make it financially feasible to offset the absence of, or the lack of revenue, passenger revenue. So obviously, with no passengers, you had to pay a premium for that belly space, which typically on a 747 would be 20 tons, no? So you can imagine what the rate increases look like, no? On the chart, you can see it's kind of tapering off right now, but it's still very, very high. So on the next slide, we'll see more or less where the air freight market is headed. So this is, and where do we expect it to recover to 2019 levels? So we're currently back at 2008 levels, which in terms of a point in time, it was the start of the global financial crisis. So we had about a 10-year period of growth and another 10 years of stagnation. So it's projected that it will take a period of 3 years actually before we see the recovery to 2019 levels. On page 6, I put this together to visually illustrate what it means specifically for the Philippines and the Philippine market. So I've taken a sample lane. So this lane is Manila to Singapore. Okay. So on any given day, pre-COVID, we were flying about 11 to 14 flights daily from Manila to Singapore on 4 airlines. Right now, we're lucky if we have 2 flights a day. So you see the reduction in capacity brought about 85% or 90% of the reduction in capacity caused the rates to spike up about 300, 400% easily. Next, we'll tackle ocean freight. So let's go to page 7. So with the global drop in demand, there are 3 big ocean freight alliances. So they began reducing scheduled sailings in an effort to keep the rates buoyant. So about more than 250 scheduled sailings were withdrawn in the second quarter of 2020. So the chart on the right tracks the withdrawal of capacity globally and compares the 2009 financial crisis. So the first spike, 2009 financial crisis, and then a bit of a spike in the middle, and then when Hanjin declared bankruptcy, we saw another spike. See, now 2020, towards the end of that slide, we show an even larger reduction in capacity. So as much as 30% of total capacity was being removed from the market, and of particularly some of the most badly affected routes. Okay, so on page 8, similar to what we did with air freight, we'll see where is the ocean freight market headed. Obviously, the ocean freight market isn't as dependent on passenger revenue like the airlines are. So it's a more sustainable market. So when do we expect it to recover to 2019 levels? So containerized trade is expected to decline by 14% this year. That's the largest year-on-year decline on record. Okay? Next year, we will start to see a recovery towards a pre-COVID-19 volumes and expect the container trade will almost be back at 2019 levels by 2022. On page 9, I'd just like to highlight what's happening in the market specifically for the Trans-Pacific trade, or which is the Asia to US trade lane. With Asia being the manufacturing base of the first world, although we are now seeing capacity being brought back because there's a lot of demand now in US and in Europe, it's still not enough to cope with the current demand. So we're now seeing a spike in spot market rates. And if you look at the chart, the line in gray is the West Coast. So you see a big jump in terms of spike in rates to going to the West Coast. So we are now seeing GRIs, or what we call general rate increases, or peak season surcharges at the USD 900 per TEU level. So in short, if you're not paying a premium, you may see your containers getting rolled over at transshipment ports for about 1 to 2 weeks, increasing your inventory in transit. If you have weekly shipments to US, then my advice to you would be you should start working with your forwarder and provide them a 2 to 4 week rolling forecast for them to book space well in advance. Because there's a significant imbalance of trade now, this is also impacting the intra-Asia trade lanes, because most of the containers are going to US and Europe and getting stuck there because there's no demand going back into Asia. So we are now seeing a lack of 40-footer and 40-footer high cubes in the market. In fact, just 2 days ago, a shipping line announced that they had no more 40-footers in the Philippine export market, and were only catering to 20-footers as they were available. So now we looked at air freight, we looked at ocean freight. Now we look at specifically the Philippines. So let's go to page 10. Let's focus on the Philippines and look at the impact to customs, ocean ports, airport warehouses, and also trucking. So when ECQ began in mid-March, customs implemented a 4-day work week for employees, thereby reducing their working hours. So the BOC, just like many other companies, also began having employees testing positive, and they temporarily shut down for disinfection. So from there onwards, a no-contact policy was implemented by BOC. So now, online filing of entries was in theory a welcome approach to protect both brokers and BOC employees from contracting COVID-19. But coupled with the reduced work week, we're now seeing an increase in processing times leading to increase in storage also and demurrage, which ultimately importers will bear. So, if, for example, if you're a manufacturer at a PESA or an airport, an export processing zone, you no longer have the option to do backdoor clearance. So what's backdoor clearance? Backdoor clearance is after hours clearance and weekend clearance. So for example, if you have air freight shipments arriving close to the weekend, specifically on Friday, it is likely that your cargo will sit in the airline warehouse over the weekend, incurring additional storage charges. On page 11, we look at the impact on ports. So ports have reduced their billing office hours, as many other offices and companies in the Philippines have reduced also working hours and working from home. So that's also impacting the release of shipments, because if they reduce the billing office working hours, then that reduces the time for you to pay and get your shipments released from the port. Although ports are encouraging its customers to do online payment transactions, which is the good side of it. The credit, there was a credit facility in an airline warehouse, I won't specify which one. It was revoked across all forwarders and brokers since July 6. So where, for example, we had a credit line with an airline warehouse, we could automatically pay the fees and clear the shipments from the warehouse. But now, brokers need to pay in manager's check or cash. So that increases the processing time to release shipments. So compounding this further, banks have also revised their cutoff for check processing and online payment transfer. So the cutoff now is at 11 a.m. So if you don't meet that cutoff, then automatically you have to wait another day before the shipment, gets released. On the trucking and ground transportation side, early on during the pandemic, as Professor Rene mentioned, there was really a lot of long queues with the checkpoints. But now that we're back to GCQ, we see that sort of improving. Although now, because although we're on GCQ, there are still curfews. So some warehouses are operating at also reduced hours because of the curfews. And drivers are now required to have rapid tests. So some requirements for rapid tests are done every 72 hours. Some require swab test or barangay clearance, which also affects the availability of drivers in the market. So unless you have a very robust and big supply base of truckers and they manage it properly, you could run into shortage of trucks to deliver your cargo. On page 12, let's specifically look at the impact to supply chains, starting with an increase in inventory lead times due to the reduced frequency of flights. You have shipments sitting in airline hubs, ocean freight rollovers at transit points. For the long haul routes, expect an additional 3 to 5 day delay. For ocean shipments, unless your shipments move on premium rates, you may experience rollovers at transshipment points with as much as 1 to 2 weeks delay. The increase in the transportation cycle times impact your inventory of either raw materials or finished goods. And if you're not properly planned, you will run into stockouts. And for manufacturers, if you have the raw materials to produce your products, you will have line down situations, which will impact your supply chain and subsequently sales and also manpower planning. In terms of increase in transportation costs, I think the slides earlier, visually gave you an idea of what we're facing in terms of an increase in transportation costs. So we're in a situation where we see a sharp rise in transportation spend for importers and exporters. So when confronted with stockouts or deficiencies in inventory levels, you will now look at shipping by air versus ocean, thus even further increasing your transportation spend. So on top of that, if you're an importer, you're also looking at additional storage or demurrage costs. Okay. So on page 13, let's talk about the journey naman to the new normal. Charles Darwin said, and I'll read it out here, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So the pandemic was initially a health crisis, but also from the very, very beginning, it was a supply chain crisis. We saw that initially when we went to supermarkets and drugstores and saw stockouts of alcohol and face masks. So here's what we would call a journey to a new normal, specifically discussions on moving towards a more digital environment. We need to focus on something that is in between the lockdown and the new normal, which we call the pre-new normal. It is essential for companies now managing this ramp up of production who are still in a crisis mode to go to a journey to a new normal. So it's a big challenge ramping up. So in the transition to a pre-new normal, there are two important aspects to consider. First, there's always a chance of a second or third wave, where we have already seen that happening in countries like New Zealand, Australia, and Singapore. And second, for the ramp-up phase, it's important to closely watch demands and how it will develop. Watching suppliers is really important. The readiness and financial health and showing their flexibility to adapt to new situations. And towards this new normal, it's time to revisit certain setups in the supply chain. Maybe new business models and new distribution channels. On the way to the new normal, supply chain will take on a much larger function, and supply chain managers must play a bigger role in decision making. Okay. Page 14, we see a quote here from Professor Richard Wilding of Cranfield University, which our company has been closely working with. So he says, in the new normal, if your supply chain is the same as the one you had pre-coronavirus, you're probably doing something wrong. So it's time to revisit and look at your supply chain drivers such as demand, but also transportation, warehousing, and the workplace. Okay. So moving on to page 15, this is the last topic, and we call resilience. So resilience comes in many shapes and forms. First off is adapting to new inventory and transportation lead times. If you're an importer within your respective ERPs, you may need to factor in a buffer in your inventory lead times. So now this will differ based on what mode you typically move your freight. As an example, air freight under PEZA will be less impacted versus duty-paying customers. So when it comes to duty-paying customers, if you do not have super green lane status, as an example lang, you will require more inventory and carrying costs because the processing lead time will greatly increase. If you move by ocean, to offset the impact where feasible, you may want to consider expedited ocean services, which are also available in the market. There are certain ocean services that offer money-back guarantees for a premium. On the extreme, to reduce the impact further, you can consider, where possible, a shift in transportation modes from ocean to air. But obviously, that comes at a cost. Now we look at improving supply chain visibility. It's equally important along with adopting new tools and embracing new technologies. So tracking the inventory as it moves within your supply chain is more important than ever to flag any potential delays as early as possible. So this will allow you to make informed decisions, such as augmenting inventory for certain SKUs and using air freight, just as I mentioned earlier. And third, and this is very, very, very important. When I used to be on the manufacturing side, even pre-pandemic, it was very important for me to collaborate with my suppliers. You have to ensure relationships are managed effectively across the supply chain for your customers, suppliers, and understand demand. So leveraging partnerships established in this crisis is very important. So as an example, if you've not had a collaborative conversation or a workshop with your forwarder or logistics providers, I highly encourage you to do so. And be transparent with data and let them understand your challenges. Now we go to mapping your supply chain. And creating transparency is a prerequisite to improve resilience. So when you start mapping suppliers, not only tier one, but as Professor Rene also described earlier, up to tier three. So knowing where they are, and for the ramp-up phase, are they up and running? What is their financial health? And are there alternatives? So understand the flows in between the players in your supply chain. And then assess supplier health and readiness. So including business continuity plans and emergency alternatives. So the pandemic has brought on financial strain with delays in payments, reduced cash flows, and subsequently the inability to produce goods on time. So the question is, will your suppliers be able to sustain their operations over the next 6 months? Lastly, consider localization or deferring inventory ownership. With the increase in transportation lead time and costs, are there alternative local suppliers versus international suppliers? You may end up paying more, but it offsets the uncertainty in terms of the, when your shipments will arrive. More prevalent in technology sectors are VMI programs. So are your suppliers able to hold inventory, particularly in the A category, in hubs close to your manufacturing facilities? Will they consider consignment programs where inventory recognition only transfers from seller to buyer upon pull or replenishment of inventory? So also look at Incoterms of your supplier agreements and recognize that ownership and transfer of title are not tied to Incoterms. Before I conclude, I will leave you with another quote from Dr. Wilding. Here he says, the bullwhip effect, to a greater or lesser extent, is likely to be the feature of the post-coronavirus new normal. For consumers and businesses within consumer-based supply chains, just in case is likely to replace just in time. So yes, that ends my presentation, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Wami, for that presentation. Clear picture, clear picture of the effect of the pandemic on logistics. No, coming from a non-logistics industry. No, I see that we have a lot of questions. So can I ask?
Candy, you muted yourself.
Sorry. Okay, there. Sorry about that. I think there are 3 questions on this, no? 2 questions on this in Facebook and in Zoom, and including me. This is my question on stocking up. So do we stock up? I told Professor Rene and Wami, but the accountant in me who has been not there for a long time, lumabas. It came out because of this, no? Stocking up is really against the grain, no? I remember, of course, more cash outlay. Where will you put them? Warehousing, concerns. Professor Rene, no more JIT. So it's really against the grain. So do we stock up? And there's an additional question on, of course, the timing or the time frames that they have to consider in their computations of their stock or their inventory. The lead times, what do they use? How long do you think they should stock up in their inventory? So who wants to start off with that question, please? Wami, you want to start?
I'll defer to Professor Rene.
Professor.
Well,
There's no universal.
yeah. Go
Yes,
ahead,
yes,
Wami.
Prof.
Go ahead.
No, there's no universal answer to that question, and it really depends on, is the demand there? If there's a demand for your product, the next question is, are you moving by air or are you moving by ocean? If you're moving by air and you're moving under PESA, typically the delays would be about 3 to 4 days. If you're moving by ocean, considering customers specifically, you could see delays stretch up to about 1-2 weeks. So if there are particular SKUs that are very highly in demand, then I guess you should intelligently stock up on those particular SKUs with high demand. But of course, it's a bullwhip effect. It goes up and it goes down. So you have to, spend time analyzing your supply chain and come up with the right solution for that. So, Professor Rene?
Prof?
Well, I agree. But actually, if you stock up something in high demand, you're not stocking up because everything that you buy is saleable. Huh? So that's not stocking up. In other words, it's already been pre-ordered. Okay, stocking up is to me a gamble, right? You stock up something and you don't know whether it will be pulled by the market. That's what I'm against, right? That's what JIT is against, right? This is hoarding, right? Okay, and gaming, assuming that the price will go up, long lead times. But again, inventory, the best inventory to carry, if you want to carry, are the safe ones, right? In other words, you have not added value. They're still not in finished form. Because the biggest cost of inventory is not working capital. It is not rental. It is obsolescence. It's perishability, especially if it is food. If it's a fashion item like dress or electronics, you're in big trouble, right? Because once you produce this you cannot convert them into something else. It's so perishable, right? And you lose the entire value of the inventory, not just the insurance, the rental. These are low cost. Huh? The biggest cost is the price of that item. You lose everything. You have to write them off. Okay, so this is the danger of long lead time. People get excited about hoarding. Huh? They don't even know whether this is going to lose value. Huh? Okay, so it's not economics game of warehouse versus interest rates. Those are low cost to me. Huh? The biggest risk is you carry something that has no demand or unpredictable demand. Then it's unsafe to carry that. It's not worth the hoarding. It's not worth the stocking up. That's my take on this question.
Thank you. Let's see some questions in the Q&A box. Dr. Ahmed said, due to COVID-19 pandemic, which raised the logistics challenge to a larger extent, what could be the strategies for the extreme poor people in the developing countries?
Okay. Strategies. Well, I think for poor countries, the more we should be resourceful because we have little resource. Huh? Then we cannot hoard. Going back to the first question, right? We have to be using our resources wisely, wiser than the more developed country, because we cannot afford to lose more money, and more resources. Okay, so this is my take on this. Okay, so more knowledge on how to manage limited resource. Okay, and more skill in resource allocation rather than sourcing. Okay? If you source funds, you source material, but you don't know how to allocate them, then that is so wasteful for developing countries. Okay? Developing countries used to get help, right? Donations here, subsidies here, but if you don't use it wisely, then that's a total waste. That's a total waste. Okay. Yeah, Wami, anything to add?
Okay. No, I agree with you. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a question in Facebook. What about the warehouse business? Will it affect this in time of crisis, or is this an opportunity?
Okay, maybe Wami can start.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of our customers are seeing a spike in terms of, you know, their warehousing needs, specifically if they're in the, you know, consumer market. But those also, we have some customers are also experiencing a dip in the demand of their products, especially those high-end products. So, in terms of warehousing, at least where I'm speaking from, we've seen a significant rise in the outsourcing of warehouses and warehousing functions, as Professor Rene talked about earlier. They're outsourcing that to the exports, obviously. There's the warehousing business is, you know, it has been really increasing in demand over the years, even pre-pandemic pa. So in terms of warehousing, the trend is there, it's going up, and I think the trend will continue. Although for some customers, depending on what particular industry you are, you might be having a lull now or a boom. So yeah.
Well, my take on this is related to my discussion earlier on proximity. It's not so much the size of the warehouse. It's the location of the warehouse. It's proximity to the user. Okay. What will be in demand is not the big warehouse. It's the nearby warehouse, near to the source or near to the user. Because you want to cut the risk, you want to cut the logistic cost of transporting these items. And you can adapt the pull system, as Swami mentioned, the consignment, right? From a hub warehouse would be in demand. Because people don't want to get goods from faraway places, from faraway warehouses, because there's a risk of disruption. The farther away the factory, the farther away the warehouse, the higher the risk. Okay? So you put a premium to proximity. You create a star network. Huh? You're close to the center. You're close to the center. That's what will increase in the post-pandemic times. Huh? People would want to source from suppliers who are nearby, who have nearby factories and nearby warehouses. Whether it's owned or outsourced, doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay. This I think Wami noted in this presentation that there are challenges or issues already with the changes in the schedule of the working hours in the custom side, right? So there's a question on
Yes.
how have you addressed this? Has what about the other side? Did the Bureau of Customs also adjust on their side, you know, to address the challenges of logistic partners such as you?
Yeah, when the pandemic hit, what we saw was, especially, you know, when the BOC employees started contracting the virus, what we saw was, you know, the BOC typically initially shut down. When it shut down, they didn't recover quickly. So we saw a bit of a port congestion early on. And then they went into a no contactless policy. So when you file your entries, you're filing your entries online now. So when you do that with the no contactless policy, you're just dependent on the response of the system, unlike before. So now that's increasing the lead time in terms of getting the approval from the time that you file your entry until the time that, you know, you pay and you release and you get your DO. See, customs is starting to cope slowly. Initially, they had one portal, but now they've moved into, for example, for ocean freight, there's one portal for North Harbor, there's one portal for South Harbor, which also helped. But there is perhaps by one day, but it's still very slow. So we're still kind of in that stage where they're still coping up. and adjusting to the new normal.
Okay. Here, this is a good question from my co-officer, Mike. What will be the future applications of business intelligence analytics or in big data, database systems in logistics management?
Okay. Obviously, there's already a big challenge to manage that big data, and you have that big data already in your ERP. So that one internally within your supply chain team together with logistics, you have to see, obviously, what are the SKUs that are high in demand, which are low in demand. But at the same time, within the logistics industry, we're also evolving. We want visibility for your shipments. So as an example, we have tools in place right now that are being rolled up pretty soon, no? Where you will actually be able to see your shipments in real time, particularly for ocean freight shipments, on the world map while they're in transit. So you can already anticipate any delays. It will give feedback if there's over at the transshipment point. So from there on, you'll be able to act quickly.
Professor Rene, you have any?
Yeah, well, back to my
advice?
one of my mega trends. I'm going back to one of the mega trends I mentioned, in which there'll be a spike in B2C e-commerce and logistics services. You know, when you go online, you actually capture data compared to the in-person selling, in which you sell to anonymous people. So when you do online, you can actually know the location of the buyer, okay, their address, their quantity. So you can use this data to locate your logistics provider, your warehouse. Okay, you can use this to plan for the efficiency of the system. It's not different from Grab and Uber. Okay, they use algorithm to get data where most of the passengers are, and that's where they locate most of their cars, so that the response time gets shorter. It's the same with logistics and warehousing. Yeah? Harvest all this data, and you know where to position your trucks, your warehouse, your logistics centers. So it's easy to serve the market. You can meet your service level, especially timeliness. So this is how I would recommend we use big data in making our logistic services more efficient, more reliable, and more intelligently. Okay, more intelligently. Yeah.
I think, given the time, we can still answer few more questions, no?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Now that the economy is picking up and it's the busiest part of the year is coming up. That's too early for me. Do you foresee the issues on logistics getting worse?
Well, every bare months because of
from that international
shopping, gift giving, right?
Correct.
We need more taxis, more cars, more deliveries. I think that I don't know whether that shopping mindset will continue. Okay, maybe more online purchases, but again, as I mentioned, online purchases demand physical logistics services. You cannot deliver these things digitally because they are tangibles. Huh? Most gifts are tangible. Okay, there are very few e-gifts, right? Except money, right? Or coupons, but even if you give a gift like gift voucher, somebody has to get those convert them to tangible good. Then again, it goes back to logistics services. So this will increase, I think, right? There'll be more online gift giving that will demand physical logistical services.
Okay. Let's go to another topic. One of our officers in the alumni noted, no, with a, let me read through his comments so that we can address this because this is regarding our seafarers. So on the container trade, there could possibly be a lot of unutilized or idle capacity get stuck elsewhere in major global ports and yards due to various country restrictions, to include seafarers not being able to travel and be at their port of call to operate those container vessels. Thus, a very disrupted global seaborne trade. Logistics in itself has been disrupted. No, may not be number of available container vessels nor its capacity. That's from Engineer June Exaltacion. So if you can comment on that.
Yeah, maybe Wami can say something about that.
Well, not in terms of the seafarers in particular, but definitely a lot of capacity has been withdrawn from the market because of COVID. Although now we're seeing it starting to come back, and actually the demand is higher than the supply. So what the three big alliances, ocean freight alliances, are doing now, they're really controlling capacity to keep the rates buoyant. So if you really need to, move your shipments, you really have to pay a premium. But at the same time, what's happening also in 2020, there was a new regulation for low sulfur fuel, which was called IMO 2020. So most of these ships that are now idle are being retrofitted for scrubbers, so that when these ships now and these containers are retrofitted with the scrubbers, they convert the crude oil into low sulfur fuel. With that, with the drop in the supply, obviously the rates are going to go up. But I don't expect that to last for long, because as I see now, actually the demand is increasing steadily already, especially for the Trans-Pacific lane, the Europe lane. And potentially in the months that come, we'll see a lot more vessels being deployed, especially as we go closer to that December period, where even like in the US, there's a lot of demand for the Christmas time and things of that. So in terms of a peak, I would probably see a peak in container trade probably until the first week of November, and then kind of taper down after that, and go and peak again during the Chinese New Year. That's typically the cycle.
Okay. Prof, do you have?
Well, my take on this is in the long run. I'm not talking about short or medium. I think containerized shipping will continue to grow because it's considered essential, right? Essential services compared to the cruise liner, luxury cruise, who use the same type of people, the seafarers. Those will be in trouble, no? Okay, those kinds of businesses, okay, in the short, medium term, including airline. But when it comes to containerized cargo, I think the labor group, the labor would recover. Okay, people would need manpower to run these vessels because they're carrying something essential. Okay, so I'm more optimistic on this industry compared to the other shipping industry, luxury cruise, who will have to take time to recover. Okay, so the manpower who used to work there will have difficulty in coming back.
Okay, thank you. For our last question, is there a where did it go? Is there a specific database, online platform available to the general public which can guide all stakeholders in shipping and the logistics industry?
Well,
like
what specific information?
I think maybe like if you need the services of a logistics or shipping, no? Is there like a good guide on how, well, mainly I guess one is who, so one is a directory, and maybe give us a guide on what to look for logistic providers.
In
for
terms
good
of,
logistic providers?
In terms of, for example, containerized trade, there online you'll find all the schedules of the shipping lines, what their routes are, how long the transit times will be. So, for example, if you're going from Asia or specifically Philippines to North America, you probably have a choice of about 7 shipping lines to choose from. And they offer different types of services. They might offer slow steaming service, which will come obviously cheaper than the fast steaming service. And you will be able to get the schedules from, so you can plan your supply chain better. So typically the shipping lines, if they're slow steaming, they're doing about 25, 27 knots per hour. Medium steaming, they're doing about 20. And slow steaming, they're doing about 15, 16 knots per hour. So it depends on what type of service you need. You'll be able to see those schedules online and see which is the faster vessel or which is the slower vessel if you're not really so time sensitive.
Okay.
Well, I think the platform may not exist, but in the new normal, we need a different kind of database. This typical database is just a yellow page, right? It tells you capacity, price. It's not very dynamic. Now, in the new normal, things will change very fast. As Swami mentioned, flights can be reduced from 100 flights to 4 flights overnight. And the database may not be able to cope with, your prices will be wrong, your capacity will be wrong. So we need a very real-time, very alive database so that you can make decisions, you can book in real time and get the right price, no? Okay, that's the type of platform we need in the new normal, because things are so dynamic. With all this lockdown of different countries, the published rates can be wrong, the lead time published can be wrong, and even the destinations can be wrong. Maybe the destination is no longer valid, okay? Because countries can reject people, cargo, ship, anytime, anywhere, for no reason, right? For no reason. And they have the right to do that because of this pandemic. Wami, go ahead.
There are also websites similar to what we also have. It's like a book and buy website. If doing a product, you just keep what's the commodity. When it'll give you all, by all. So you have variety to choose from that are already available, that can just go online and choose.
Okay, I think. Okay, so again, thank you, Professor Rene and Wami, for being our speakers this afternoon. No, we are very grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experiences with the AIM alumni community. Since we are experiencing new things during this pandemic, your views and comments are very timely. Some of the facts you gave us are, eye-openers. We learned a lot from you, and hopefully we can apply it to our own organizations and companies. To close this webinar, I would like to ask Mr. Bert Banabat, the chairman of the AIM Alumni Association, to give us some parting messages. Hi, Sir Bert, I can see you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Candy. So we just had our 7th webinar for our AIM community, this time dealing with the logistics during this time of the pandemic and going into the new normal. The board of your alumni association has come up with these webinars as a form of service to our AIM community, the alumni community. We have identified topics of interest, whether it's through the type of business you are in, like this one, logistics, and in the past we had something on the banking industry, or the needs of the times like resilience, or thriving during this pandemic. So we would welcome from you any suggestions for future topics because we intend to continue on with these webinars while we're all at home. So many thanks to our speakers today. Professor Rene Domingo has always been, accommodating in accepting invites. And of course, Juami Santa Maria for sharing your insights on this industry. And we'd like to thank the Alumni Relations Office led by Bernie Hiao and JICA for hosting this Zoom meeting. And of course, our beautiful moderator, Candy Lapan. And of course, to all of you participants, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you in our future webinars. Candy?
Thank you, Sir Bert. Lastly, before we end, we would like to invite you to the next webinar of the AIM Alumni Association on September 9. See, the topics are actually requests of alumni. So our topic is thriving and living it under a better normal. The next speakers are RCBC President and CEO, Mr. Eugene Acevedo, and Chuneshi President, Engineer June Exaltacion. So we hope to see you on September 9. And with that, stay safe, everyone. Have a great evening ahead. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.